Have you ever watched a mother slap her own daughter in front of 200 wedding guests? I have. I lived it. My name is Paige Harrison, and on March 15th, my mother handed me a stack of legal documents on a stage in front of Boston's elite. She demanded I sign away my $2 million penthouse as a wedding gift to my sister. When I said no, her palm connected with my face so hard my earring flew across the marble floor. She expected me to cry. She expected me to apologize, to fold just like I always had. Instead, I picked up my earring, walked out, and made one phone call. 1 hour later, a woman walked into that reception. A woman my mother had told everyone was senile and gone. And when Victoria Harrison saw who it was, she started screaming. Let me take you back 3 years to where this all began. I was 29, sitting in my studio apartment, eating cold takeout over my design blueprints when my grandmother called. Eleanor Harrison did not waste words. 31 years as a law professor had cured her of that. Paige, sweetheart, I am updating my will. I am leaving you the penthouse at Seaport Boulevard. I asked her why. Because you are the only one who visits, she said simply. Every Sunday for 10 years, while your mother sends Christmas cards and your sister sends nothing at all. She warned me my mother would not be pleased. That was the understatement of the decade. Within weeks, the news leaked. My mother summoned what she called a family discussion at her Beacon Hill mansion. My father, Richard, sat in his leather chair like a man reviewing a legal brief. My sister, Madison, perched on the arm of the sofa like she was posing for a photo. My mother, Victoria, sat in the center, already arranging her face into something maternal and wounded. We need to talk about your grandmother's condition, she said. Her condition, as if loving me was a symptom of a disease. She is clearly not thinking straight, Victoria said, her designer bracelet catching the light. Leaving $2 million to one grandchild. That is not rational. My father suggested, in his flattest attorney voice, that the fair thing would be for me to decline the inheritance or split the proceeds. This came from a man who had missed my college graduation for a golf tournament. I am not signing anything away, I told them. Grandma made this decision. If you have a problem, talk to her. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Then I hope you are prepared, Victoria said, for the consequences of being so selfish. The consequences came fast. I was quietly dropped from the family group chat. I found out about Madison's engagement party through social media. When I asked my mother why I had not been invited, she said she assumed I would be too busy with my little decorating business. A business that, in reality, had 12 active clients and revenue that had doubled that year. But to Victoria, anything that was not a law degree or a rich husband was just a hobby. Worse than the exclusion were the stories. I heard she told a neighbor that I had manipulated my grandmother, that I had turned her against the family, and that elderly people were vulnerable to schemers like me. I never corrected her publicly. I thought silence would make the storm pass. I did not understand, yet that silence was exactly what she was counting on. What I also did not understand was why, later that year, Grandma Eleanor moved into a luxury senior facility at $12,000 a month. She told me she wanted peace and quiet. But sometimes, on our Sunday visits, I would catch a flicker in her eyes that looked almost like fear. Did something happen between you and Mom? I asked once. She only said, some things are better left alone, for now. I let it go. I shouldn't have. It would take 3 more years for me to understand exactly what she was protecting and why. In December, 3 months before the wedding, an invitation arrived in heavy cream cardstock. Madison's wedding, black tie. After 2 years of being treated like a ghost, they were suddenly inviting me back into the fold. My mother called that same evening, her voice warm in a way I hadn't heard since before the will. This wedding is the perfect opportunity for the family to heal, she said. Then came the real reason for the call. This would be the perfect time to revisit our conversation about the penthouse. Madison and her fiancé will need somewhere appropriate to start their life. You could simply transfer the property as a wedding gift. She was using my own grandmother's love as leverage to take away what she had given me. I am not transferring anything, I said. The warmth vanished instantly. I expect you to make the right choice, she said and hung up. I understood the trap. If I went to the wedding and refused again, in front of everyone she had spent 30 years cultivating, she would destroy my reputation in the exact social circles that fed my business. If I didn't go, I would look like I had something to hide. I RSVP'd yes anyway. I had done nothing wrong, and I refused to act like a criminal for it. 1 week before the wedding, Grandma Alina called at 7 in the morning. Her voice carried an urgency I had rarely heard. If something happens at that wedding, and I believe something will, call Marcus Webb immediately. She gave me his phone number. Whatever happens, she said, I love you. Then she hung up before I could ask why. The ballroom on the night of the wedding was a monument to old money. White orchids cascading from chandeliers, a 12-piece jazz band, and 127 guests pulled from Boston's legal and financial elite. My father greeted me like furniture he was trying not to bump into. Madison hugged me the way you would hug a stranger at a networking event, then asked, point blank, "Did you bring the paperwork?" They had already told her fiancé's family they wouldn't need their condo. They had already decided without asking me that I would comply. The penthouse is mine, I told her. It is not up for discussion. Her smile cracked into something that looked exactly like our mother. Mom is going to handle this, she whispered and walked away. Moments later, one of my mother's friends cornered me at the bar. I heard you are holding onto some property for your grandmother, she said. Will you be selling it soon? There it was. The narrative Victoria had spent years building. I wasn't the heir. I was a temporary custodian, waiting to do the responsible thing. I escaped to the balcony, and that is when Alina called again. Victoria has been planning something for weeks, she warned. She needs an audience. That is how she operates. Then, she told me the truth she had been sitting on for 3 years. 6 months earlier, an investigative reporter had come to her with something strange. A house in Cape Cod, one Alina had owned outright, had been sold for nearly $1 million. A sale Alina never authorized. She hired a forensic document examiner. The signature on the transfer was a forgery with a 98% probability. And Alina could prove it, because during the exact window the papers were supposedly signed, she had been in the hospital recovering from a broken hip. That is why you moved to the senior facility, I said, understanding flooding in. Not for peace and quiet. Because you couldn't stand being near her. I couldn't prove anything without destroying everything, Alina said. So I waited for her to make a mistake. Tonight might be that mistake. If she pushes too far, Marcus has everything he needs. She told me not to sign anything, and if it goes badly, call him. If Marcus calls me, she said, I will be there within the hour. I have been waiting 3 years for this. Dinner passed in a blur of stiff toasts. Then my mother rose, champagne flute in hand, and tapped her glass. I would like to invite my eldest daughter, Paige, to join me up here, she said, smiling for 127 witnesses. I had no choice but to walk to that stage, because refusing would make me the villain before the real performance even began. Victoria draped an arm around my shoulders. It looked like affection to the crowd, but it was a grip of control for me. She announced that I had been holding onto a $2 million penthouse, and that tonight, Madison's wedding day, was the perfect moment to share it with the family. She produced a folder of transfer documents, my name already typed on the signature line. The room actually applauded, as if I were about to perform an act of love instead of being coerced on a stage. Mom, I am not signing this, I said. It is the apartment Grandma left to me, not to Madison, to me. The applause died into utter silence. Victoria's grip tightened. Madison appeared at the edge of the stage, hissing that I was choosing that stupid apartment over family. I told her the apartment wasn't stupid when she was the one who wanted to live in it. Then I said the thing I had swallowed for years. That Grandma had raised me every summer while Victoria was off at galas. That she hadn't raised me at all. That is when my mother's hand moved. The slap snapped my head sideways. My earring, the one Alina gave me for my 30th birthday, flew off and skittered across the marble in dead silence. I bent down, picked it up, straightened it, and put it back on. "That is the last time you touch me," I said, and my voice didn't shake. Then I walked off that stage, through the tables, past the frozen jazz band, and out into the lobby. I sat on a velvet bench, dialed the number I had saved a week earlier, and said 4 words. "The documents are needed." "Understood, Miss Harrison," Marcus said. "She will be there within the hour." She was. At 8:45, the doors opened, and Alina Harrison walked in on her cane, her silver hair pinned, with Marcus Webb beside her holding a briefcase full of consequences. She took my face in her hands, saw the mark on my cheek, and her jaw went tight. "Then let's finish this," she said. We walked back into the ballroom together. Madison was crying. Victoria was arguing with my father. No one noticed us until someone gasped, and then the whole room turned to watch Alina Harrison cross the floor toward her daughter. "Mom," Victoria said, going white, "how are you here?" "I am here for my granddaughter's wedding," Alina said, loud enough for all 127 guests to hear clearly. "I wasn't invited." "I came anyway. I am here to tell the truth." She confirmed, for the record, that the penthouse was legally, validly left to me in a will. Marcus produced the certified copy. Then he produced the Cape Cod transaction records, the forged signature, and the forensic report. "I could not have signed those documents," Alina said. "I was in the hospital with a broken hip." "I authorized nothing." Victoria's mouth opened and closed with no sound coming out. "You are lying," she finally managed. "This is fabricated." "You are senile." "I am sharp enough to hire experts," Alina said evenly. "Sharp enough to preserve evidence. And sharp enough to have already forwarded this entire file to the district attorney's office." The color drained from Victoria's face entirely. She turned to my father, begging him to say something. He took a step back instead. "I didn't know," he said. "I signed what you told me to sign." 35 years of marriage came apart in real time, in front of everyone Victoria had ever tried to impress. Alina turned to me. "I am sorry you had to find out this way." "It's okay, Grandma, I understand." She looked at her daughter one last time. "You lost me the day I found out what you had done. Tonight, everyone else just got to see the truth." Then she walked toward the exit, and I walked beside her, and I didn't look back once. Outside, in the cold March air, Alina told me what came next was out of her hands. She said this wasn't about revenge, it was about the truth finally having room to exist. "There is no cruelty in telling the truth," she said. "There is only clarity." The fallout came fast. 2 weeks later, Victoria sat for 4 hours of questioning at the DA's office. Her attorney withdrew. My father moved into a hotel and released a statement claiming ignorance, a claim that meant little since his signature sat right beside hers on the forged documents. Madison postponed her honeymoon indefinitely while her new family's lawyers assessed the damage. Victoria was quietly disinvited from the charity gala she had co-chaired for 17 years. The Bar Association opened an ethics inquiry. I got apology texts from people I hadn't heard from in years. One turned into a massive interior design contract, the largest of my career. Word spread, not about my mother's collapse, but about my work. Slowly, carefully, I started rebuilding something that was actually mine. 3 months later, I am sitting on the balcony of my penthouse, watching the sun go down over Boston Harbor, a glass of wine in hand. Alina comes every Sunday now. We talk about my father, who called to explain his side. I told him I needed time, that if he wanted a relationship with me, he would have to earn it, not explain it. We talk about Madison, who has texted asking to talk. I told her I am not closing that door, but I am not opening it until she is ready to see our mother clearly. I started therapy in April. I met an amazing architect named Ben, who has no idea who the Harrisons are, and likes me for my work and my laugh instead. And my grandmother, finishing her wine, told me what she actually wanted her legacy to be. Not the property, but the lesson underneath it. I spent too many years staying quiet to keep the peace, she said. I don't want that for you. I want you to speak the truth even when it is hard. Being kind doesn't mean being silent. If you are listening to this because your family has ever expected you to shrink yourself for their comfort, you need to know this. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to say no. Protecting your peace was never the crime. It was the answer all along. Thank you so much for watching my story today. If you enjoyed this video and found it empowering, please hit that like button to show your support. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this. See you in the next video.